You're listening to another episode of Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. This is the place we're entitled to Brad's opinion. And now for your host, Brad Allard.
All right. How y'all doing out there in Burleson? I'm here with Burleson's favorite Democrat, Ronnie Johnson. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
How long did you plan that joke for?
I understand.
Yeah, I was waiting. We're going to talk about that in a little bit later, but primarily we're going to be talking about bond issues and election issues and infrastructure and, some of the stuff, that the glamorous job of a councilman and maybe possibly mayor is one that, not always, spotlights and, paparazzi. Sometimes it's pretty dull, grinding stuff, isn't it? And so we'll talk about all those things.
Sure.
Let's run through the sponsors real quick so we can get right to it, because some of y'all had questions that y'all sent to me, and a lot of them are on the same topic, so I'm going to kind of condense them a little bit. All right, thank you, Daniel. CrossFit Burleson, 317 Southwest Wilshire, over behind Stone City Soup and Valet Cleaners, and that strip mall back there. So if you're looking for a big strenuous workout, that's a good place to do it. Check their page out, CrossFitBurleson.com, and for class times and what am I saying? Good heavens. My brain isn't working well today. Class times, workout routines, regimens, trainers, etc. I'll get it together. Don't worry. All right. Thank you, Shandy, at Shandy Stocksville Group. If you're looking to move into real estate, that's who you need to talk to. She'll be on next Monday because, as most of y'all know, she's running for place 4 and school board. So we'll be talking about mostly that, maybe a little bit of real estate, but mostly about her school board race. Also, thank you to Otto. Everybody knows Otto at our place. I believe you have a sign there. Is that right? I haven't been there in about a week, which is unusual for me. You have a sign out there?
I do have a pretty big sign out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen several of you and Mr. Fletcher's all around town now. I can tell it's election season. So I see sometimes across the streets, competing signs, and I wonder if they throw things at each other. I don't know. Our place, though, is a neutral zone, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you, Otto, at our place. Also, today at Wild Cigar, he's having a chamber ribbon cutting meeting I'm going to go to right after this show. So if you hear this live and you want to go over there and check it out, it'd be great. They got specials and whatever else going on. And so I'll be seeing Chris there. It's over at the Standard, over by Doughboy Donuts and the Revelry and whatever else. So thank you, Chris. Thank you also to Tiffany. She's also, Tiffany Nico, she's also at their Standard, Local Life Magazine. It's out already. It's been out for a little while. It comes out the first week of the month, and she has localifetx.com to keep up to date on all these things. And she's a great sponsor. I believe anybody that gets that magazine sees in the middle, they see all the city announcements that she does. And she does a lot of stuff for the city, right? With that pub crawl she had last Saturday. It's amazing about St. Patrick's Day. It really cracks me up. So I compare that with Cinco de Mayo. Every day, one day of the year, everybody's Irish. One day of the year, everybody's Hispanic, because it's a good excuse to enjoy oneself, shall we say. Anyway, on to the next. Thank you to Southern Gym. They're open right now up on the top floor. They'll be down at the bottom floor, hopefully in a month. That's the goal. It depends if the contractors and the materials get in time. But Southern Gym will be open pretty soon in the bottom floor. The goal is April 15th, and it'll be much larger, and they'll be able to expand their inventory and their services and whatnot. And I always compliment her on this, is that next time you take Miss Peggy over there, they'll have a place to park the husbands to watch the ball game while they do their shopping or whatever. So
thank goodness.
Yeah, no, you go to these shops that women like to go to a lot, or like antique malls. I mean, I'm thinking, if I had an antique mall, I'd have an open bar over there, or a cash bar maybe, because I know all the husbands are all kind of looking like, oh, geez, I'm here with my wife, but there you are. Also, thank you to Hotworks, Michelle Humphrey over at 731. It's an infrared workout, helps with the inflammation, helps with the joints. She has 11 different workouts, so there's going to be something there that you're going to be able to engage in. So check out Hotworks it's by Chicken Salad Chick over by Kroger and the theater and all those over there. Here I'm doing the Facebook voodoo I do to... There you go. And it's good. So thank you, Michelle, for what you do for the community. She's also very active. I will ask you a question in a minute that she brought up. When I went by a couple of weeks ago to visit, I'd like to do a little sponsor care, and she brought up a question about city council. I don't know if you can really answer it, but it was an interesting point she made. Also, thank you to Melissa Harmon, Texas Farm Bureau. Her office is behind Captain D's over on Summercrest, but mostly she's on the road a lot, so she ought to Get a hold of her at 682-804-0534, and she'll check out your insurance for Texas Farm Bureau. And if you're getting the best rates and the best deals, she'll tell you if you're getting them at another company, but she can probably beat it. I know I gave her my insurance, and I saved some money, and I upgraded some of my insurance, particularly my house insurance, because housing is getting more expensive, as Mr. Johnson well knows. I'm sure he's been told more than once. Also, a couple of things going on, Ed. We have on our Wednesday morning B&I meetings over at the Hampton, 8:30 to about 10:15, 8:45 to 10:15. B&I is a networking group. We're trying to expand. We have a Visitors Day on March 29th, but you can come tomorrow or the next Wednesday if you want to check it out for yourself. So B&I Business Connect, it's a pretty effective outfit for me because 3 of my sponsors are B&I related. So there you are. Also, we have Light Up the Night in about 3 weeks. Sorry, Bianca, don't get upset. On April 1st, Light Up the Night is for the Center for ASD over at Crestmont. And the Center for ASD does great work with children and adults that are on the autism spectrum. And they got all sorts of events like petting zoo and a magician, and they're going to have food trucks and the whole thing there. So it's going to be a great event. Okay, see, I do that in one breath, so get through that in a hurry. One of the primary topics that's popped up has been the bond debt. Okay.
Yes.
And if you don't mind, I'd like to pull up your ad, if you will, on Facebook. I'm not trying to, you know what you said, but I mean, I just want to make sure I know what you said so I don't mess it up. But basically, you were saying that in 2020, the debt was a major issue at $86 million, and then it was recalculated to be even higher than that. And now our debt is even higher.
Yes.
Okay. And obviously you think this is a problem that is existing with Burleson with the debt level. Am I interpreting that correctly, that we have too much debt?
I think this, Brad.
All right.
I think that I did make a post, and my deal was in 3 years ago, when the new folks came in, there was comments made that we owed too much, we spent too much, and we were in a debt crisis. 3 years later, oh, by the way, at that point in time, we owed $150 million. Okay, 2.5, 3 years later, we owe a neighborhood of $230 million. Well, my whole heartburn about that is very simply, when you accuse me of overspending and the council of overspending, and now we've come back and we've added a great deal more debt. We passed the largest bond package in the history of Burleson. So, and yes, I had some. To me, that was problematic. Can we pay it? Yes, we can pay it. We can. There were several things that struck me when we started the bond preparation, and I mentioned this in your last in our last visit. And very simply, I said, I voted no.
Right.
And there were reasons for it. At that time, the economical climate was not good. And I made that comment that we were in a situation where inflation was an all-time high, and that when you went to the grocery store, you could certainly see that when you paid for your grocery bill, it was very high, so was gas. And I simply said that I did not think it was the time for this. Now, let's come back a month later. If you've watched the news at all, you have seen where one of the biggest banks in the United States has failed in California. So we've gotten no better. Interest rates have gone up once again. Did I want to see this happen? No. But I wanted to be very, very cautious about the way we were handling this bond thing, and I did not like the structure of it. And by the way, if you'll go back and look at one of the council meetings, I expressed my concern about the way it was structured. The folks out in Burleson thought that they were voting for an expansion of the police department. They thought they were voting for a new fire building out west of town. That's not what they were voting for. They voted on an amount of money to be spent. Now, the difference being simply this: when you have an amount of money not set aside, you don't say we're going to spend, for example, $40 million on the expansion of the police department. When you say that, it's just an amount of money. It means it can be moved around. Now, when new council comes in, their idea of how this thing should be shifted back and forth could change. And that means the money can be moved back and forth on projects. So I didn't like that, and I expressed my concern about it. So, and I was very worried that we were going to incur debt that could quite possibly be difficult to pay back if the economy got worse. And it hasn't got any better, I might add.
All right. Has that happened though that we're not able to pay it yet, or is it still? Not an issue
yeah,
yet?
we're still in preparation time now,
okay.
So we could be looking at 7 or 8 years before it's certainly all spent, and a lot of time again for this money to be moved back and forth. So that was my big heartburn about it.
Well, what that ad, which I have people that want to know what I'm talking about specifically, move on the ad on your webpage. It talked about that the debt was a big issue in 2020, yet we've added debt since then, and that's your contention was we can't afford Chris Fletcher, is what you said on the page. Is that a statement that that you see your position in the city council that we are not in a position to maintain our debt level, or is that? I guess the best way we want to put it is that are we as a citizenry, should we be concerned that we're heading towards a situation where we may have problems paying off the debt without increases in the tax rate and things of that nature?
Very simply, at this point in time, we certainly can pay our bills. We are in financially good shape. Okay, when you incur a very large debt like we just did. And let's use the rule of thumb as in, and I used this before, 2008. Things got particularly difficult. Now, you could have big changes, big swings. I'm not going to sit here and tell you we can't pay off our debt. We can pay off our debt, but I'm certainly going to tell you it could become very difficult. We will pay it, yes. We will not default. Let me make very sure of that. But it could become very difficult, whereas you figure out, hey, listen, we have this debt we have incurred. Can we do this now? We need this. Can we buy this? Maybe not. Maybe not, because we are, in fact, going to pay our bills. So that, again, that was my, I thought it was problematic.
A lot of people, and I got to be fair about this, in 2020, the debt was a big issue, and they blamed Ken Shetter, and by extension, you and the rest of the council, for taking on debt and whatever else. And even though there was distinctions made about this type of debt and that type of debt, it was this response was basically it's all debt. Therefore, it's money we have to repay back. Is that how we should look at it now? It's all debt, or should we differentiate between debts now? Because that's what I'm hearing now. Is we differentiate between types of debt, or should we take it's still all debt and we have to pay it back? Therefore,
debt is debt is debt. There are different areas in the city, different pots of money. I'll give you an example. you have an A pot, which I'm on the A committee, and that money is different from the city budget's money, and that's designated in areas toward A funds, economic development. So yes, you have 2 or 3 pots of money, and out of these pots of money, if there's debt to be had, and there's debt on every one of them, it's paid out of that pot of money. But that said, debt is debt. So I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, you did. And Sarah Carlson has a long statement here. I'll just read it for those who are going to be watching or hearing on Apple and Spotify. The real problem is the debt should never have been misrepresented for political gain in the first place. That is why it's an issue. And I personally think the items could have been done with CO and CIP, and I would have preferred that. Just differentiating between types of debt there. Down out of CO and CIP. For the listeners, Sarah, why don't you tell us what that means? Because not everybody's going to know what that means.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You want me- okay.
Yeah, sure.
2 different kinds of debt. One you vote on, and one that can be created by the city council itself. Okay, if the city council incurs debt just through the city council, it can be it's not going to be $86 million. It's going to be smaller increments.
That's what she says here. It could be done out over time, not in one giant bond, but that requires council to take responsibility for making that decision, and some council members preferred to be able to say residents approved it. And there was a vote last May, of course, very narrowly approved. I guess the gist of that posting was that a couple of years ago people were talking about debt as a real problem, and now have we added to that problem? Is that what I'm getting? Is that we haven't really dealt with the debt issue, or have we added to that problem?
When you say dealt with the debt issue, I would say that Burleson has dealt with debt issue in that we have the money to pay our debts. Have we handled the debt properly? In most regards, yes, we have, because the debt incurred is for things that we needed for our community. So I think we acted responsibly. If you're talking about in the past, we did act responsibly. We had a number of conversations about how we would spend our money. And as far as if you're talking about the new bond, I told you this. I didn't think we took enough time to plan it out. So
yeah, that was Victoria's contention.
I hope
as well.
that I answered it.
No, you did. You did. It just well, let's kind of on a somewhat related note. This comes out on your campaign page. Do you approve everything that goes out on your page?
Glad you asked. My wife and I, we handle my campaign. There is nothing that goes out that I don't see first. Do I have help? I have help with good folks out there that help me fact check. They help me with the wording of the things I put out. But there is nothing that goes out that I don't see first. I will say this: you don't have to send me a photograph of what I said so that I might take that back. I already know what I said and what has been put out.
Well, here's a question from your daughter. She goes, I think people want to know if you're implying Fletcher's votes add to the debt. That's what she says.
Okay.
Yeah, Rhonda's asking, are you saying that Mr. Fletcher has added to the debt in his tenure as mayor? Is what she's getting at.
Well, if you're talking about the bond, the answer was he voted for it. And the other answer is I voted against it for the very reasons I just got through saying. So yes, we've taken on more debt. If if it's a yes or no you want, the answer is yes. Mr. Fletcher voted for, and he wasn't the only one. There had to be 4 votes.
Right, there were.
I can tell you right now, me and Rick Green and Victoria voted against it. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and Bill has a question about, or a comment that depot on Main used to be go after you. Used to go after you. Chris signed off on the commercial site plan, and I don't remember him voicing any concerns. The $2 million taxpayer money Shelley Grant, who is running Fletcher's campaign page, is claiming they were paid to the developers, was part of an infrastructure agreement, reimbursed with TIF, not ad valorem property taxes. Well, I tell you the truth, Ms. Ronnie, we're getting into the weeds on all this, but basically, let's kind of get back to the social media business. There's been some things being lobbed back and forth, but you're saying that whatever is out there with your name on it, you've approved.
Okay. I'll answer that. First of all,
Well, I'm not talking about some strange. I'm talking about on your page officially, not.
on my page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me be clear. I mean, you can't be responsible, and Mr. Fletcher can't be responsible. Some Yahoo on Facebook says something. All right, I'm not saying that at all. You're going to have supporters, and he's going to have supporters that maybe take it too far.
Sure.
But we're talking about an official campaign page. You're the guy.
I'm the man.
All right.
I'm the man. I take full responsibility for everything I've said.
Well, because I've seen some stuff in that neither one of y'all would own to, because that you can't keep some people off Facebook or other social media and saying something about you or your opponent that is unfair or untrue. But I'm talking about an official capacity here only, because you can only control what you can control.
Well, I'd like to make one more comment, okay? The things I put on my page, again, can be backed up by fact. I'm not out there smearing or creating problematic things for the mayor. I don't smear him. I simply tell the truth. And I don't believe if you tell the truth, you're out of place. And just remember, folks out there, I tell you, I'm planning on putting a fact check sheet out on my website so that I prove everything I have said. So I think that will be helpful.
Right. Well, this bond issue could be really technical, and it gets kind of dizzy, but for a lot of people, they're looking at the bottom line. I'm glad to know, and I figured we were solvent. I'm glad to know we are. As far as what's going to happen in the economy, despite what Jumpin' Joe in the White House is saying, I think we're going to have some sort of downturn. Maybe not as severe as feared, but will be some. But you've always been, even on the school board and on city council, pretty conservative when it comes to money. I don't want to say you're tight, but you're very ask a whole lot of questions. I mean, I remember this from board meetings for the school board. Yet we're still a growing community. We need infrastructure. How are we going to meet those growing needs without expanding the budget?
The answer to that was certainly we have to expand the budget. But the difference being, when I ask questions, am I tight? Yes, I am. I'm going to give you
tight. I wouldn't say that. I would just say
frugal. I believe, yes, frugal. That's a great word. I'll give you a 30-second background on me. My mother and dad were born during the Depression. Now, my dad worked for 50 cents a day. My mother worked too. They got through it.
Right.
When I was growing up, they reminded me every day of the year to be careful with my money. That's my background, and that's just my nature. I say, hey, let's be careful the way we spend our money. I tell Ronnie, Jean, and Angela, be careful the way you spend your money. One of these days, you may need some of it. So, yes, I am very conservative. I always have been conservative. Do I understand we have to spend money? I most certainly do. But I say, let's look into it very carefully before we do spend it, and maybe we can save a little of that money. And it's always been that regards with me. I've never changed.
Yes, your daughter Angela says that you, when you open your wallet, it squeaks, and that Rick Green said you squeak when you walk because you're so tight. But anyway, that's just some for the peanut gallery here. Your faithful daughter.
I expected that.
Yeah. Well, they probably, I don't know. I remember, used forks at Dairy Twin. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, it's there was some comments earlier about apartments and whatnot else, and. Some of the critics in the last election in particular were talking about how we have too many apartments coming into this community. Yet, on the other hand, we don't have affordable housing as easily as it used to be. This is my comment. I think not everybody understands just how limited the council's ability is to prevent multifamily housing from coming in. It's not just a violation of zoning laws, but also federal and state civil laws. If you tell community we will not have apartments, multifamily housing, you're going to get the housing department of the federal government on your back in a big hurry.
Yes.
But what is your view about multifamily housing?
Okay. Glad to tell you. Mm-hmm. And let's take apartments, for example. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to get into a big debate over this, but I've got a couple of things I'd like to say. Sometimes there's an implication that people live in apartments aren't good people. That's not true. Mm-hmm. I lived in an apartment. I told you that the last show. I lived in an apartment. I didn't have any other place to go. I lived there. My mother lived there in apartments for many, many years. And if you look at our situation right now, as far as available housing, there's a whole lot of people that can't afford a $400,000 or $500,000 home. Mm-hmm. They must do the best they can. Mm-hmm. Now, as far as apartments are concerned, if they are zoned for that particular thing, we can't say no as a council. Mm-hmm. We can, but we'll be sued and we'll lose and we'll spend a bunch of money doing it. Mm-hmm. So as far as apartments concerned, we have between 1,000 and 2,500 people coming into Burleson and have had for the last several years. We have to have places for them to live. So that's one alternative. Mm-hmm. But like I said, Brad, I'm not going to get in a big debate over that.
Well, there's really not much debate, to be truthful, because like I mentioned, the laws are such that you don't really have an opportunity to say no. And if you did push against subsidized housing or anything like that, the Civil Rights Department of the federal government would jump all over. You're seeing it happen in other communities like my hometown of Plano. Right. Plus, the fact is, we don't want to become a community like maybe Southlake, where the people that do a lot of the work in this town can't afford to live here.
That's right.
The teachers, the police, the firefighters, the people that work down at City Hall.
First-year teachers.
Yeah. And they say, well, look how much money they're making. Well, when half your salary is going to an apartment, maybe a young married couple can do it. But when my daughter got out of college, half her check was going to pay for an apartment here in Burleson. And it was nice, but it was pretty small. And
yes.
And so we don't want to be this kind of town where people have to live, say, out in the country or in Alvarado or whatever else just to work in this town.
Yes.
So
that's exactly right.
It kind of does stick in my craw, to be honest, when I see people complaining about multifamily housing, because I think it's elitist, and I think in some ways they're having a bias against the kind of people that they think live in apartments. And they need to...
A lot of great people that live in apartments.
They need to check their compassion a little bit on that. As far as city council itself, last meeting there was a lot of discussion about agenda item 8B, and that was Mr. Stanford's approach to the library issue, which I believe was going on your last show. And y'all on a 5-2 abstentions, I guess, since you had 2 absences. Last week, you're going to reprimand Mr. Stanford for his conduct in this matter. Is that coming up next Monday?
Well, yes, and I'll try to be brief on this, but and I mentioned at the last city council meeting that as city councilmen, we needed to understand our role, and if we have a problem, it goes straight to the city manager. We shouldn't. Throw it out there on Facebook. We shouldn't. We ought to follow this. We ought to follow the guidelines of what were set out for us as councilmen. And I personally don't believe you attacked. And I think that was very problematic. And the 5 people that sit there that night said they thought it was problematic too, and that we should have a record of reprimand. And that's what has happened. It's very simple. That's what has happened, and 5 of us will sign it.
And I'm not going to speculate what will happen at that meeting. We'll see what happens.
Yes.
Yes,
it's liable to be very volatile.
Well, it very likely could be, but maybe let's hope for the best. That that by the time this all comes down next week, maybe things have cooled off a bit. But I've seen some of y'all's meetings, so I'm not quite so sure that's going to happen. Do you think you'll be able to run meetings differently if you become mayor? How would you do that?
Well, I tell you, and the answer is yes, I can. And the thing about it is, there are methods to stop that before it gets started, and I can tell you I would have. This particular occurrence happened outside of the boardroom, and so that thing I can't control what someone says outside of a council room. So, but there are methods to control what is said when you're having a meeting. And would I do that? Yes, I would. I'm there. As far as I'm concerned, if elected, I'm there to bring people together, not separate them. And I believe that I can do that.
Well, it's, that has been an issue. And I brought this up with the mayor on several of his appearances here, that a lot of people feel intimidated about going before the board because they may get a very sarcastic response from a couple of the members who we don't need to get into, or that they're going to be uncomfortable in the crowd because of some of the people that come to support those members. How would you change that atmosphere?
Well, it's in my estimation, the way you handle that is, and I would say prior to every community interest item, I would make the statement that if it's not on the agenda, the council cannot respond to it by law, open records.
Right.
That stops a lot of the going back and forth with our public. If it's on the agenda, you can answer a question about it. If it's not, you can't say anything about it. And I have no problem whatsoever turning to the city manager and the lawyer and saying, we can't respond to that. Now, we're going to stop right there. We're not going to respond to it. So that's how I deal with it.
I've been at plenty of the school board meetings in particular where you and others on the board have been called everything but a child of God.
Absolutely.
And so,
Absolutely.
And you had to sit there and take it. And that's just part of the drill.
Yes.
Now, if it's part of the agenda, I'd hope this is part of the agenda, so there will be some response. I'd like to hear Mr. Stanford's response to this. I'm sure he has one. I'm not going to put words in his mouth. He'll have his own things to say, but it's that has been an issue, is the volatility in some of these meetings, and it's my hope that will cease to be a problem soon, because I've had people tell me I don't want to go to that council meeting because I'm afraid of being accosted in the hallway by somebody, or have I don't want to go speak in front of it or say my piece in front of it, even in open mic time, because they don't want to have to go and face somebody waiting for them out in the hallway, or giving them a bunch of rebuttal or whatever you want to call it.
Well, we do keep an officer outside and inside. So I think we can head. I can tell you we can head some of that off because an officer is not going to put up with somebody blasting somebody else.
Well, I hope so because I had a couple of people on my show that have said they had a very unpleasant experience. Now, people are really that interested. They can go back and check the archives, but they had an unpleasant experience, and it's my hope that after this election that will be much less reduced. And
I certainly think it can be.
Well, and I think the presence of Mr. Russell and Mr. Scott coming on board is going to help with that a lot because they're both pretty calm people.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, we're going to have 3 new ones. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these things are going to take care of itself.
As far as Mr. Anderson and his opponent, my personal thinking is Mr. Anderson, being as well known as he is, will probably win that race. I don't know the young man he's running against. I have nothing to say about him, one way or the other. But, Phil's been well known. And as an old coach, that some people are not always fair in their assessment, when you're from the sidelines.
Absolutely. I will tell you that Phil is known widely in our community. And I've met the young man a couple of times. He's a very nice young man.
Yeah, I heard that, but I have not had any contact with him. He's welcome to contact me if he wanted to space on the show, but I haven't heard from him, so I don't. And there you are. It's his call. But I just think I can just imagine Phil, though, because he doesn't – when he'll get a chance to respond, he will.
Yes, he will.
So, but anyway, it just that has been a concern. Also, I teased you at the beginning of the show about calling you everybody's favorite Democrat, and anybody who knows you even a little bit knows we know how you vote, but in all this, and you're not anybody's idea of a Democrat. I can tell you that. But does that kind of bother you that this kind of Republican Democrat stuff comes into a city election when really by law it's not supposed to?
Yeah, well, yes. And, I'd be glad to comment about that. First of all, I think everybody out there that knows me knows I've been a Republican for my life.
Right.
And I also will tell you that I have the utmost respect. I have a great number of friends that are not Republicans. They are Democrats. I don't feel that that's a bad thing to say about somebody. The way I feel about it is very simple. You're entitled to the way you feel, whether that be politically or whatever way you feel. That's your business and none of mine. And I will tell you this, Brad, when somebody calls for a sign and says, "Hey, Ronnie, I want to support you," I don't interview them and say, "Oh, by the way, before I bring you a sign, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? Did you have a Biden sign in your yard or did you have a Beto sign in your yard?" No, I do not. I simply take a sign out, put it out, and thank them for their support.
On the last meeting with Mr. Fletcher, there was some discussion about vandalism with signs, and you got on the screen and you made it back then. I'm talking about last week, sir. You got on the screen and said, absolutely, you do not endorse, support, or in any way want people to be messing with anybody's signs. I just want to let you have a chance to say
absolutely
that. Let you have your chance to say that.
The sign issue.
Yeah.
Brad, let me tell you how I'd handle that. I think it's very simple. Had I had lost a sign, I would have gone out, replaced it, and said nothing. And gone on about my business. I most certainly am. I am not going to encourage anybody that follows me to destroy a sign, take a sign. I certainly would not do that.
Well, to be fair to Mr. Fletcher, I provoked that question. I don't know how much you want to talk about, but I brought that up. Not so much him. But as far as sign vandalism, I think that's kind of petty, don't you? I mean,
I really do.
I can't imagine saying, "Oh, his sign is gone, and therefore I won't vote for him." What kind of thinking is that? And nobody, I don't think even Mr. Fletcher believes that you would condone that. But there's some people that think they're doing either you or him a favor by taking a sign, and that's stupid. You know,
it really is.
Or we also can't overlook the possibility we just got a couple of teenage boys that thought it'd be fun.
That's exactly right.
You know.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The answer is yes. A lot of times they think that might be fun.
Yeah, just
If it happens, it happens.
just being dumb, and it's just it's just part of a campaign.
Oh, sure it is.
And actually, I know this, since you were involved in it directly, it may not seem like it, but this campaign is a lot less contentious, or this whole election season so far, God willing, has been less contentious. I mean, we've got really good school board candidates running, and I'm very pleased about Mr. Scott and Mr. Russell. Come on, they'll both be on the show in April. I know that this is part of the campaign that no one likes, is this, kind of stuff, but, knocking heads, but I guess you've done this before. Have you ever lost a race?
Well, no, I haven't. But there's, no, I have not yet.
Yeah, I know.
I've told you before, I've never gone into a race that I didn't think I could not be beat. I know better than that. So you work hard, and that's exactly what we're doing right now. And I will tell you this. I don't, and again, I've said this before, I don't care what the good folks on the opposite side say about me, just leave my family out of it.
I haven't seen that yet.
And so far, we have done a very good job.
Right.
And I hope it continues, Brad. I hope it continues.
Well, sure, because, Nancy Fletcher is a really, really nice lady, and Peggy's a very nice lady. And so, your daughter also says, I'm jinxing you by bringing this up, but it's before... Okay, let's see. I also get some other comments here. Gosh, boy, that board is hot today. Good. Well, okay, Sarah's bringing up the point that Mr. Fletcher brought up about the signs about a post, but she also, but I did bring it up. It was, as people should know, or they probably do know, you and I and he and I discussed what we're going to talk about prior to the show, and I kind of mentioned that, but we didn't really dwell on that. But this is no candidates. Sarah's saying, to summarize, no candidates sending people around to round up their opponent's signs. Of course not. And so there you are. But how would you assess your position in the campaign?
I like my spot. We've received a lot of support. I will tell you, the first 24 hours that I announced, we got called for 100 signs, and I was very encouraged. As we go on, and for the last 6 or 7 weeks, I like my spot very well. I feel like we're doing the right thing. We're saying the right things. And I feel like people in the community know me well enough to know that I'm not going to lie to them. If I say I'll do something, I'll do it. If I have a concern, I'm going to put it out there. So that's the way I feel about it right now. I like my chances.
And going back to the partisan issues, I'm going to put words in your mouth. It's your contention that you represent everybody, regardless if they voted for Joe Biden?
That's a good one. Yeah, I do. Yeah. And, the thing about it is, a person that runs for office should most certainly realize that they do represent all the people in the community, not just a portion, but all of them.
Even if you don't agree with them?
I'm sorry?
Even if you don't agree with them, you have to represent them, right?
I certainly represent any and all. Yeah. And by the way, I respect all's opinion.
Well, representing is not the same thing as agreeing with them. You don't have to agree with, somebody's political position, but you do represent their interests. And in this,
absolutely.
And the interests, most people should be, isn't, what your policy position is on, foreign policy or gun control. It's like, my street's going to be safe, or my trash is going to be picked up, and that kind of thing. And I regret that in the last election in particular, we had state Republicans involving themselves in our election. I did not care for that one iota. I'm a Republican, but I didn't want Sid Miller down here or others, Alan West down here, because that's not their business. How we operate here.
Well, Brad, growing up, that's not the American way. When I was growing up, 50s, 60s, most certainly we respected everybody's opinion. When we had I'll give you an example. You had President Eisenhower. That's way back there in the 50s, a Republican. Everybody respected him. Of course, he was a World War II hero. And then you had John F. Kennedy, and a wonderful man, and everybody respected Mr. Kennedy. So there was respect. And did we always agree on all the opinions said? No, but I certainly did respect others, and I was brought up that way.
Yeah, and I saw that as I was younger because, like, as you probably well know, Mr. Carter, President Carter's probably not going to be with us much longer. And I disagreed with his policies even as a teenage kid, and as I studied him even more so. But no one can say anything about his personal character that isn't. I mean, he's a wonderful man, and
he is
a good Christian man, and he was a servant to this country. Would I vote for him again? Absolutely not. But, I proudly cast my first vote for Mr. Reagan, but that doesn't mean Mr. Carter was a bad person.
No, absolutely not.
He's a good man, and when he passes, that type of politician is going to be missed. We could use that now. Now, I've asked you this before, but I'll give you another chance to say it again. I don't know you. I've never met you. You come up to me in some sort of meet and greet. What would you tell me is the reason I should vote for you?
Well, I would tell you just take a look at my record. I would tell you that if I've said something, I've kept my word. I will tell you that do I have experience? I have 31 years of experience. I have served as president of the school board. I have led. I've been a leader. I would tell you that as far as my personal background, there's some things I believe in, and I'm going to give you a little coaching axiom here. You've heard a million times, okay? It's probably in every school district in Texas, but you will have, when you're talking about coaching, there's going to be a sign in every locker room that says there is no I in team.
Right.
I am a team player. I have always been a team player. I don't get into saying I am responsible for this, that, and that. What I'm responsible for is being part of that team that brings about these good things that we have had in Burleson and correct some of the things that need to be corrected. If you want to ask me for my accomplishments, in my opinion, my accomplishments are that all these years I have been a team player. If I had to say, Brad, who deserves more than anybody else as far as accolades, it'd be my family.
Well, they've been on this board, both Angela and Rhonda. They are obviously your two biggest supporters, or maybe among your wife as well, so that's a good thing. Good to have the family votes. There's 3 votes for you.
You're exactly right. I won't get skunked.
Yeah. Well, I'll address this particular issue though on a possible debate because we talked about this before. I'm going to just address because I've been asked by others if there's going to be a debate between you and Mr. Fletcher. All we could say is this. Is that Ronnie and I talked about it prior to the show, and if this is to happen, it needs to be a discussion between Mr. Fletcher and Mr. Johnson. They can, they see each other every other week, so they can find a time to talk about it. But the format was agreed upon, at least by Mr. Johnson, that it would be on this platform if it happens. But I'm going to let Mr. Johnson and Mr. Fletcher work out the details about when and where.
Yes.
All right. Because I don't want to put words in his mouth. I don't. But we did talk about it. And I've been getting some messages. Are you going to ask about that? And I did. And so my response is the two of them will discuss it. And if it works, they know where to find me. If it doesn't, so be it.
Yes, sir.
Is that about right?
Yes, sir. That is exactly correct.
All right. Okay. Anyway, I'll just move on from there because I'll let y'all deal with it. But I really, I look at this campaign coming up and all this, and we're going to probably have to show, hopefully I have to schedule for one more time at least. Mr. Fletcher comes on, I believe, the 11th of April. I'm not looking at it, and I'd like to have you on at least one more time. Try to keep it as even as y'all wish it to be.
Sure.
But it's a tough campaign.
It certainly is.
And some people, I think, need to throttle back on some of the stuff, that they're flinging out there. And I'll just leave it at that too, because, I don't want to be trying to make comparisons and say, well, this one and this one and this one, I'll be here all day. And I don't like this, what about this or what about that, be thrown up there. But I really appreciate you being here. I wish you every success. I've known you for a long time, and I know you've made decisions that bug the hell out of me sometimes, but that's what elected.
Sure is right.
But that's what elected politicians do. If they never made you unhappy, they're either lying to you or they're not thinking for themselves. And so, no. But I remember you having to make some tough decisions at the school in particular. We talked about this last time about when the financial crisis hit, and there were some hard decisions to be made.
Yes.
And that experience, I think, you can carry forward with you, because if we go through that again, at least you've been through this rodeo before, because I remember some of the cuts that y'all were talking about with the schools. I'm sure broke your heart, but they were tough. We're talking about like we're going to be brown bagging it to lunch and no bus service and all this other stuff. It was ridiculous.
Yep. It sure was.
Anyway, so I wish you every success, and we'll work out another time we can.
Sure.
And, your daughters, I tell you what, do they not work for a living? I mean, it's spring break, isn't it, for Rhonda? So, okay.
Spring break.
Yeah,
exactly
okay.
Right.
But thank you to it says his grandkids think he's pretty great, too. That must be nice.
Yes.
All right. Thursday, I have a rare open date. I'm going to talk about this bank business, the Silicon Valley Bank. And then on Monday, I have Shandy. On Tuesday, I have another open date, and then I have Reach for Johnson County, another nonprofit, and I'm going to talk about it with Ms. Byers, Erica Byers, and that's a week from Thursday. So we'll talk about it then, and we see you later. Bye-bye.